Okay, now I do want to stress the rumor aspect of this video that you see in the thumbnail and title, as it is a source that I have not reported on before. However, it is a secondary source to the already existing rumor we have from Beat 'em Ups that you might remember, a video we covered on the channel recently, who, while he's a massive YouTuber on the platform, is not really known for putting out leaks and things like that related to unannounced Nintendo projects. And well, he just dropped a whole list of games that, according to him, he heard there will be a direct in July, and he provided some specific titles that will be there that we'll briefly re-highlight in this video. But now we have a separate source chiming in on this, and it's one that we actually covered a while back due to them having a podcast with Nash Weedle, who, if you've been around on this channel for a while, you will know I was once upon a time very skeptical of Nash Weedle, the source overall. And as more information they have put out there for the Switch 2 launch window has continued to prove correct, I have definitely paid a lot more attention to them. And the person providing this secondary source for a July Nintendo Direct rumor is actually the channel that Nash Weedle was on for that podcast, and also a mutual friend with multiple different Nintendo YouTubers on the platform that I know, like Andre's Restart and Nintendo Prime. And full shout outs and credit to Andre's Restart, as I did see him cover this first. And in fact, this rumor really originated on his channel during a live stream. But because we now have multiple sources kind of putting out there the idea of a July Direct, regardless of if you buy into these exact sources or not, I want to have a broad conversation on the possibilities and the likelihood of Nintendo holding a July Nintendo Direct when we are clearly outside of the realm of them potentially holding one in June any longer. And that is the historical month if you look at their overall track record on when they would hold a summertime Direct presentation. Is the fact that June is come and gone really disprove that a Direct will be happening anytime over the summer and that we have to wait until July? Not to mention the fact that we have gotten recent updates and standalone announcements like Splatoon Raiders and like the exact launch date of Drag and Drive for Nintendo Switch 2 now coming out on August 14th. Does Nintendo have anything else over the summertime, or is what we have today what we're going to get minus some one-off small announcements? Oh, and buried in all this conversation is kind of a rumor that's slipped through the cracks, which is the fact that maybe we should be expecting a standalone Metroid Prime 2 and 3 announcement from the Nintendo Today app. So we're going to unpack all of these details, but before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick this video off by revisiting the Beat 'em Ups portion of this rumor, because you might remember that mega YouTuber on the platform, Beat 'em Ups, over 1 million plus strong, biggest Nintendo YouTuber on the platform, no doubt, who is not historically known for putting leaked information out there or even really rumor mill stuff or passing off anything in terms of like inside knowledge. This is just not something that they typically do. Just mid podcast into their episode, they basically said they know a Direct will be happening in July, and that the following games will be there: Metaphor ReFantazio, GameCube Shadow Drop of Pokemon Colosseum, Death Stranding Director's Cut S for the Switch 2, which funnily enough, there's also headlines right now floating around showing that Nintendo Pictures is actually in the credits of Death Stranding 2. I don't think that's related to this at all, and rather, you know, Nintendo acquired Nintendo Pictures, and they were basically a company with existing contracts in the pipeline before they got acquired, and that's kind of why you're seeing Nintendo Pictures in the credits of that game. Now that they're owned by Nintendo, they are officially a Nintendo entity. But anyway, long story short, I don't think that's fuel to this fire. But interestingly, Death Stranding and Nintendo are intertwined in separate news stories right now. Also, The Witcher 3 Nintendo Switch 2 edition, which would be a very interesting remaster to see hit the Nintendo Switch 2. And then Metroid Prime 4 release date, that's a no-brainer and probably the most likely thing out of anything on the list to definitely be there, because it's a 2025 game. We're approaching well into the second half of the year, and we have no release date for a massive title for Nintendo, and I'm really liking September as our chances for that. And then the one more thing is claimed to be a teaser for the next Animal Crossing, which will come out in 2026, which would actually also line up with a previous leak that Nash Weedle had put out there, suggesting that 2026 would be the next year for the next Animal Crossing game on Switch 2, which would be very interesting if that ends up checking out. And that definitely would be something to the caliber of a show closer for a Nintendo Direct presentation. Okay, from here, we then have friend of the channel, Andre's Restart, that made a video about this and basically put out in his live stream, Attack the Backlog, who is the individual who had the podcast with Nash Weedle. I'll have all this stuff linked in the description down below, so you can go check out Andre's Restarts video, and as well as Attack the Backlog and the podcast that's on his channel. Anyway, he super chatted in. Good to see you, bro. I can say I was told by somebody I trust 100% that they were shown photo evidence of a July Direct and said there's a September one too. And there has apparently been some back and forth messages between Andre's Restart and Attack the Backlog. And the long and short of it is Andre's Restart knows this person enough to essentially trust them. And apparently the source that is providing this information to Attack the Backlog is also somebody who has gotten some things correct in the past that have just checked out. Again, take all this very much with rumor territory. I don't know exactly how this is going to fall, but if you don't want to buy into the rumor portion or the sources around this, I want to talk about just how likely is it from a logic perspective, because we are in the launch window of Nintendo Switch 2. We had their big blowout presentation for the Switch 2 itself on April 2nd this year, and we had a March Nintendo Direct for the Switch 1, kind of the final send-off Switch 1 branded Direct only on March 26th, just the week before. So technically, if you want to break it down in terms of how many main scale Nintendo Directs we've had, we have already had 2 for the year, and there's definitely a thought process online that maybe Nintendo is going to remain silent over the summer and just do these Nintendo Today app announcements for certain games that they're ready to reveal, and also update us with release dates for missing games like Prime 4 through something like the Nintendo Today app as well. However, I would like to highlight that we have gone the entire summer so far with every other gaming presentation like the Xbox Game Showcase and Summer Game Fest seeing a ton of third-party games revealed and announced, and anything that was not already confirmed to be headed to the Nintendo Switch 2, like Tony Hawk's 3+4, which was featured in either Summer Game Fest or Xbox Game Showcase. Anyway, that was the only one that had like the Switch 2 logo at the end of it. There was maybe one other one-off game that I'm not remembering at the moment, but literally like everything else that is on the table and fully third-party and could come to Switch 2 had no Switch 2 logo, because it seemed like a lot of these third-party devs are probably not able to announce their games for Nintendo's platform because Nintendo wants to have the presentation to actually do that, whereas a game like Tony Hawk 3+4 that is confirmed to be coming to Switch 2 and was revealed at the April 2nd Direct did have that official logo and promotion. And this makes me believe slightly more that at the bare minimum, if we don't see some kind of traditional full-scale Direct from Nintendo over the summer, that very likely is at least bare minimum a partner showcase Direct that we have seen Nintendo do in absence of their full-scale Directs in certain years, like the lead up to the Switch 2. That year was very partner Direct focused, as opposed to their traditional presentations only actually getting one mainline Direct in the month of June in 2024. Now, what is different about the likelihood of it being a mainline Direct in this year compared to last is that now we are in Switch 2 promotion season, and this is a console that is on retail store shelves right now that Nintendo wants to market to you and wants to give you plenty of reasons to go pick up, probably not just Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and Metroid Prime 4, but maybe some unannounced games and a big third-party showcase of support besides that. And I do believe that because we are in launch window, momentum driving window for the Switch 2, that Nintendo's not actually going to pull punches, and we will probably see a full-scale mainline Direct as soon as something like the next 2 weeks. I actually think that early July makes more sense than late July for this presentation to happen, because as this Attack the Backlog rumor also outlines, this source is supposedly supplying them photo evidence as well of a September Direct. And my mindset is really that Nintendo will be back to their regular cadence of Directs, 3 mainline Directs this year in 2025. We saw the drought at the end of the Switch 1 generation, but now not only do we have Switch 2 games we need to learn about from a first and third party perspective and release dates and things like that, we also have Switch 1 games just kind of not getting releases right now. Like, we saw the March Direct, but we don't have a lot of updates on anything at all that's coming to the Nintendo Switch 1, which is still a very healthy console at 150 million units sold, and no doubt not everybody is upgrading to the Switch 2 right away. So Nintendo still wants to make investors happy and obviously drive the revenue by supporting a console that has that kind of user base behind it. And I just don't think that they're going to simply not have anything over the summertime window until something like September. We would go all of July and all of August and into September without potentially hearing anything else from them. I really don't think that that's the case. And you can make the case that they have been using the Today app more, and maybe like once a week we're going to get some kind of new announcement from that. I still think that a regular presentation does actually hold some weight over the summertime. And I would like to also highlight a related rumor to the Nintendo Today app, which does stem from Nash Weedle, which one of these things have already been essentially proven true, where you can see this post back from April 19th, where he says there are pending announcements and some of these will be exclusively through the Nintendo Today app. And Nash Weedle outlines one surprise game with a release this year for Switch 2. That could presumably be Splatoon Raiders. We don't know that it's out this year, but I think that it's likely that that game could be out this year, a spin-off in the Splatoon franchise. One announcement of a major game for 2026 for Switch 2. So that's just some brand new title that would come out for 2026. Maybe that would be Splatoon Raiders, but I actually think that Splatoon Raiders is more likely to be this year. Then you have two announcements of Switch 1 games for 2025. And he's asking, are you already using the app? And that Switch 1 games announcement for 2025 is actually the more interesting one, because on that same podcast with Attack the Backlog, there was a snippet of conversation from Nash Weedle where he teased that he still believes that Metroid Prime 2 and 3 are a thing and will be headed to the Nintendo Switch. But also, when asked about how Nintendo might reveal it from Attack the Backlog, he just straight up said, pay attention to the Nintendo Today app. So while I would like to make that a prediction essentially for the next Nintendo Direct and that it would happen over the summertime, we could actually see something like Nintendo announcing a couple Switch 1 games as a combo pack. I'm thinking they're a combo pack. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're individual releases, but I do think that and it's unfortunate too to say this out loud, they could be eShop only releases. I really hope they give us a physical version of it, similar to like that of Pikmin 1 and 2. I think that they will give us a physical version, but it might be later than the eShop release date. Just like we saw them do for Metroid Prime 1 remastered, and same thing for Pikmin 1 and 2 remastered. So hopefully it's just a delayed physical release and not a skip on the physical release at all. But anyway, I think that those games, the numbered releases of Prime 2 and 3, still make too much sense to give to the hardcore fan base before Prime 4 is out. And I really don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for Nintendo to stick to the numbered format for Prime 4 and have 2 and 3 just mysteriously missing, and you can't play them outside of going back to the Wii when they were released as Metroid Prime Trilogy on the Wii. Like, definitely not ideal if Nintendo does that. And also something that I think when you look at their history around stuff like this with Pikmin specifically, like, they just like to do fan service things sometimes and say, hey, if you're fans of this franchise, here's all the games, all the numbered releases. You now have them all easily playable on the current generation of consoles. I do believe that we're going to have that, and I also think that these games would clearly come to Switch 1 because Metroid Prime 4 is coming to Switch 1, and I don't even necessarily think these ones would have a Switch 2 edition tied to them. They would just be Switch 1 releases that can be played via backwards compatibility, and of course you have the ability to download them day one for your Nintendo Switch 2, and maybe they do have a Switch 2 version, but I don't think that the version difference is going to be substantial or anything like that. These are rumored to be, if we're to believe the sources of Nate the Hate and Jeff Grubb back in the day when these first started popping up, is that they are likely simpler remasters than that of what Prime 1 received. Could be more of a just HD up-res from the GameCube versions with some quality of life control improvements and things like that. So anyway, all really interesting stuff. I do like the chances overall of a summertime direct from Nintendo, and I also like the chances of it happening in July, and legitimately in a few weeks from now, maybe the first couple weeks of the month if we're lucky. But clearly, being in the window of a new console launch with Nintendo, things are highly unpredictable, and that's where I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video. What, if anything, would you want to see announced at the next Nintendo Direct presentation? And are you inclined to believe any of the rumors going on out there about there being a July presentation, and specifically some of the games that we may have learned about that would be featured at that July presentation? And do you think that we have a shot of seeing Prime 2 and 3 still make it to Switch 1 before Prime 4 is out? or have you kind of given up hope at that? And do you think it would happen from the Nintendo Today app as an announcement standalone? Or do you think that, yeah, it would be something that would more likely be featured in the summertime direct if we do see that presentation? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.